The first thing Elara noticed about the Intergalactic Military Academy wasn't the architecture or the gravity calibration or the fact that half the students didn't have recognizable faces. It was the silence that happened right before the noise. 100 species could fill a corridor with chatter, clicks, scent bursts, and light-patterned speech. Yet, the moment a door sealed, the entire hallway would fall into a clean, disciplined hush, like the station itself was listening, like it was measuring who belonged. Elara didn't. Her boots pinched. Her uniform collar felt like it was trying to choke her into behaving. And when she walked past cadets, covered in living armor, humming force fields and ceremonial bone plating, she felt painfully unfinished. Just a human in cloth and nerves. She told herself, don't shrink. Don't flinch. Don't give them the satisfaction. Then she stepped into xenobiology combat strategy and immediately, understood what satisfaction looked like. The professor was an insectoid tower of chitin and authority, with too many eyes to ever be surprised. His mandibles clicked as he lectured about dominant species threat displays, how posture communicated intent, how pheromones signaled fear, how light spectrum pulses could trigger mass panic. The lesson wasn't about biology, it was about control. Elara tried to focus on her notes. She really did, but she kept noticing the Draconian a few rows ahead. Zyler. Everyone whispered the name differently, some in awe, some like a warning out. A Rim Draconian. Imperial bloodline. A prince. If the rumors were true, he sat like the classroom belonged to him. Nearly 8 feet of obsidian scales that swallowed the overhead lights instead of reflecting them. Horns swept back from his temples like blades. And beneath it all, a low rumble in his chest that wasn't sound so much as pressure. Like the air itself had learned to be nervous. He hadn't spoken once. He didn't need to, Elara told herself. She was imagining the way his head angled slightly whenever she shifted in her seat, the way his tail ridiculous, that she could think that without panicking rested perfectly still, like a quailed decision. Then the professor's many eyes narrowed with something almost like amusement. Practical session. He clicked rand. Combat arena. Pairing exercise. Reach your opponent. Respond to threat display. Do not escalate. The last words sounded like a joke that only the professor understood. The grand combat arena was not a room. It was a statement. A circular pit with tiered observation platforms and a ceiling of projected stars. As if the academy wanted every fight to feel like it mattered to the universe. Cadets gathered in rippling clusters, spined shoulders, shimmerskins, pulsing crests. Light beings hovered in geometric formations. Plant-based cadets rooted themselves near heat vents. Metal-bodied units clinked as they moved. Elara stood there with a training staff and a heartbeat that refused to obey orders. Pair up, the professor had said. Elara looked around, hoping for someone small, friendly, to try to dot. Her gaze landed on Zyler's shadow instead, because Zyler was already walking toward her. The crowd noticed. Of course they did. You didn't miss a predator choosing a target. Elara's throat tightened as Zyler stopped a step away. He looked down at her like she was a curiosity. He'd already decided was disappointing. She lifted her staff because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. The professor's clicking grew softer, and Trasithi human Zyler said it. Last, his translator rendered the words smoothly, but it couldn't hide the contempt. Show me what your pathetic species can do. Laughter rippled through the arena, different species laughing in different ways. Some with sound, some with vented steam, some with flickering lights that mocked. Elara felt heat crawl up her neck. She forced her feet into the stance the simulators had drilled into her. 4 months. Basic defensive maneuver. Safe. Controlled. She moved. A staff struck Zyler's chest with a sharp thud and dashed nothing. It wasn't like hitting armor, it was like hitting a mountain that didn't notice whether Zyler didn't even blink. He didn't shift his weight. He let the blow land, let it bounce off him, let her feel her own inadequacy rebound back into her arms. Then he flicked his wrist barely. A motion, the air displaced. A gust, born from sheer physical power, slapped Elara sideways. She stumbled, barely catching herself before the ground took her dignity. More laughter, sharper this time. Elara's palms stung. Her lungs forgot how to breathe correctly. She tasted humiliation like metal. This wasn't sparring. This was a public lesson. This is what humans are. Zyler advanced. The overhead lights caught on his scales and died there, swallowed. His shadow swallowed her next. He leaned down until his face was close enough that Elara could see the fine grooves between his scales, the old scars that didn't match academy training marks. His eyes weren't just reptilian, they were intelligent, in a way that felt dangerous, like a strategist wearing a predator's skin. The air dropped several degrees. Or maybe that was just Elara's body trying to become smaller. Zyler opened his mouth. Rows of teeth made for tearing, not teaching, and he growled. It wasn't loud, it was worse than loud. The sound carried a frequency that bypassed thought and went straight to instinct. It hit Elara's nervous system like an alarm written into the DNA of every prey animal that ever survived by running. Her muscles turned to ice. Her stomach dropped. Her vision narrowed around them. Cadets reacted without permission, hunched shoulders, defensive curls, a light being flickering erratically. A small avian species actually dropped to the floor and covered its head. Fear was universal, and Zyler spoke it fluently. Elara knew what everyone was waiting for her to crumble, to cry, to flinch backward and confirm the story they'd already but into something uglier and more useful. No, not tired of being treated like an accident in a war school. Zyler held the growl steady, expecting collapse. Elara stared into his eyes, sucked in a breath so deep it hurt, and she growled back. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't trained. It tore out of her throat, raw and ragged, full of anger and frustration and the stubborn refusal to be erased. It wasn't dominance, it was defiance. The arena went silent so suddenly it felt like the station had lost power. Even the professor stopped clicking. Zyler's growl faltered, cut off mid-threat. His mouth stayed open for a heartbeat too long. He blinked once, twice, as if the universe had glitched, and he needed to confirm the data. Elara's growl died out, leaving her breathless and shaking, yet she didn't look away. Her heart hammered like it was trying to escape, but her eyes stayed locked on his. She had just challenged a Draconian Prince in the oldest language there was, and she had no idea what that meant. Then Zyler closed his mouth. A rumble rose in his chest again. Elara's body braced for the next attack, but the rumble broke into something else, deep and booming, shaking his shoulders. He was laughing, not mocking, real. Zyl straightened to full height, looked at her as if she'd become interesting in a way he hadn't expected, and said, "No one has ever done that before." His voice had changed. The sneer was gone. In its place was something sharper than kindness but warmer than contempt. Respect. He turned his head toward the watching cadets, eyes sweeping over them like a blade. "What are you all staring at, Trent?" The spell broke. Cadets scrambled back into motion, though their attention kept drifting like magnets toward the impossible thing that had just happened. Zyler faced Elara again. His gaze wasn't amused. It was analytical. "Your form is terrible," he said. Elara swallowed. "Thanks, your stance is weak. You telegraph every move. Appreciate the feedback," she muttered, throat still burning. But Zyler continued, ignoring her sarcasm with expert precision. "You have spirit." He stepped to a rack, grabbed a heavier training staff, and tossed it at her. Elara caught it awkwardly. The weight nearly pulled her arms down. "Raw," he added. "Stupid, suicidal, useful." Elara blinked. "Useful." Zyler's eyes narrowed slightly, like he was deciding how much truth to reveal in public. Again, he ordered from the top, and that should have been the end of it. A humiliating first day turned bizarre, turned survivable. But as Elara raised the weighted staff, she noticed something that made her stomach tighten again. The professor's many eyes weren't watching Zyler, they were watching her. Recording, measuring, as if her growl had triggered a hidden test the Academy never announced. Zyler moved into position at last. Just slightly, not a ready stance. An invitation. Elara attacked again, clumsy, overcommitted. Too slow. Zyler corrected her with small, brutal taps that left bruises and lessons. He pushed her off balance, then forced her to recover without panic. Every mistake became a doorway into something harder. Between strikes, Zyler spoke like a weapon being sharpened. Humans rely on linear motion. Stop. Angles. Elbows close. Your center is too high. Don't fear falling. Fear hesitation. Hours passed. Sweat soaked Elara's uniform. Her arms trembled. Her pride broke and remade itself in quieter shapes when she finally dropped to one knee. Panting, "Zyler," he said. Elara wiped sweat from her brow. "I growled." "In Draconian culture," Zyler said, voice low, a growl returned his acceptance. "It is the declaration of equal standing and challenge." Elara stared at him. "So I basically would sign my own death warrant." Zyler's mouth tilted, sharp teeth showing, not a threat this time. "You declared you were not prey." Elara's pulse steadied for the first time all day. "And you respected that?" Zyler stood. His expression hardened again, but not into cruelty, into purpose. "Tomorrow," he said, "training continues." Elara pushed herself up on shaking legs. What? Zyler's gaze flicked briefly toward the observation platforms, toward the professor, toward the Academy's watching systems, then back to her. Because the Academy does not reward spirit, Zyler said. It tests it until it breaks. He stepped closer, voice dropping. And because in 7 days, there is an evaluation called the Unity Trial. Elara's breath caught. She'd heard older cadets whisper about it like a superstition. It leaned in just enough that only her translator would catch the words. It requires a mixed-species pair, he said. And someone is planning to make sure I fail. Elara's stomach turned cold again. Zyler straightened, masking the confession behind a prince's calm. If you train with me, he said, louder now, public again, you might survive this academy. Elara stared at the staff in her hands, heavy, unforgiving. Real then. She looked up at the dragon who had tried to break her in front of everyone, and had paused when she refused to break. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Nifidon. Zyler's eyes darkened with something that looked almost like approval. Then you will remain what they expect, he said. A story that ends on day 1. Elara tightened her grip. Around them, the academy roared back to life with sparring and shouts and the metallic ring of discipline. But inside Elara's chest, something new held steady, something that didn't care about scales or status or whether she belonged. She raised the staff again. From the top, she said. Zyler's smile returned, small and sharp. Good. Above them, the projected stars glimmered, beautiful, dissonant, indifferent, and somewhere behind the observation glass, the academy kept watching, as if it had finally found a human worth testing. Because the day, Elara growled back, wasn't just the day she stopped being an outsider, it was the day she became a problem. Asterisk. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in that situation. See you next time.